candidates. Then all voters will elect the chief executive through one person, one vote. Finally, there is appointment by the Central People's Government.
Following these steps, we can all elect our chief executive in 2017.
Food writer Simon Hopkinson visits some of London's best restaurants for tips on cooking delicious meals at home.
Fantastic.
From European classics to light summer lunches. Monday, Simon Hopkinson cooks at 8 on Pearl. Heart-stopping thrills for adrenaline junkies. Jaw-dropping hotels. Historic and cultural treasures. Captivating wildlife on land and sea. And much, much more. Wednesday, Delia School of Canada presents the coolest places on Earth at 9 on Pearl.
Maid abuse employer gets 6 years in jail. The financial secretary says when property cooling measures are needed, they'll come hard and fast. And finding out more about Jihadi John. Good evening. The former employer of Indonesian domestic help and abuse victim Erwiana Sulistianingsih has been jailed for 6 years and fined $15,000. Rani Samtani has our top story.
Law Wantung was taken to the district court this morning for sentencing. Earlier this month, she was found guilty of 19 charges, including causing grievous bodily harm with intent, common assault, and criminal intimidation relating to Erwiana's case. The charges laid against her involved 2 other helpers as well. In mitigation, the defense said because Law's son suffers from skin allergies, she had high standards of cleanliness. Law's lawyer added that her actions were not the worst of its kind. Comparing it with previous cases, Law used ordinary household items, not weapons. And the defense counsel said there was no evidence of permanent physical and psychological injuries. The court heard that Erwiana suffered almost daily while working for Law. District Court Judge Amanda Woodcock said when Erwiana was unable to work in January 2014, Law personally escorted the helper to the airport and tried to cover up what she had done. Woodcock said letters submitted in Law's mitigation showed support for her good character, but she noted they were written by the defendant's equals and peers who see a very different side of her. The judge said Law had shown no compassion for people she considered as beneath her. Woodcock added that her son's allergies do not excuse the abuse or her conduct. She sentenced Law to 6 years imprisonment and imposed a fine of $15,000. The judge said it was regrettable that this type of abusive conduct is not rare. She suggested that it could be prevented if domestic helpers are not forced to live in their employers' homes. In addition, the judge accused employment agencies for Indonesian domestic helpers for charging significant fees, and that many agencies turn a blind eye when the safety of helpers is at risk. Woodcock called the system organized and sophisticated and said there must be an element of exploitation. She called on both Hong Kong and Indonesian authorities to investigate.
No reform, no justice!
Several domestic helper groups and their supporters petitioned outside the court. Commenting on Law's sentence, Erwiana said she was not fully satisfied, but is happy that her former employer is going to prison. She said serving 6 years doesn't guarantee Law will not hurt others after her release. Erwiana did express hope that her case will send a very strong message to employers and to the Hong Kong and Indonesian governments. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
The financial secretary says measures to cool the property market will come hard and fast if and when they are needed. On a radio show, John Dunn was also grilled over the decision to introduce a $290 million package as a remedy to the Occupy protests. Diane Toh reports.
Over 79 days of the protests last year, several main streets across the city were taken over by those fighting for a more democratic Hong Kong. There were many complaints from those in the transportation, retail and tourism industries that business was affected. John Tsang took care of that by unveiling $290 million of measures, the first relief package, in his budget speech on Wednesday. This morning, he was accused of cherry-picking facts and figures to back these measures, which range from waiving commercial vehicle examination fees to overseas activities to promote Hong Kong's image.
Retail sale in September, which is before the occupation, was up by 4.8%. But in October, so shortly after, it was only up by 1.4%, and by December it was down by 3.9%.
And in November it was up by 4.1%. I mean, you skipped a month there. This is cherry picking.
Despite being caught out on the figures, Tsang denied the move to introduce the relief measures was politically motivated.
What we need to do is to really bring the proper message to overseas investors and to overseas tourists who want to come to Hong Kong, that Hong Kong is a place that they could come back.
How does waiving taxi fees affect overseas investors?
What we are doing for these companies, for the commercial vehicles, is to show our concern for them.
The figures that you quote, the whole idea of these support measures is political.
No, it is not.
Then why didn't you compensate the restaurant industry last year when they had the same shortfall? It was affected in the same way.
It's not about that. I mean, it's about an illegal action that caused the concern of the people in this area, and this is something that we have to express concern to.
It's about legality. It's about sentiment. It's not about economics. It's about politics. This was a political decision.
Let's agree to disagree.
Listeners also called in to complain about a lack of measures in the budget to curb rising property prices. The financial chief insisted he would take action at the right time.
I would not hesitate to introduce new measures in order to maintain the healthy and stable development of the property market. But more importantly, we need to safeguard the stability of our financial system. When we think that this situation has gone to a stage that we have to do something, the measures will come hard and fast.
Diane To, TVB News.
The Hong Kong Monetary Authority this afternoon announced tighter mortgage rules for home buyers as part of efforts to cool the property market and protect the banking system. The maximum loan-to-value ratio for self-use residential properties worth less than $7 million has been lowered by a maximum of 10 percentage points, 60%. The maximum debt servicing ratios of mortgage loans for second homes have also been lowered 10 percentage points, effective immediately. The Democratic Party's 20th anniversary party tonight was boycotted by most senior government officials. Local politicians from different backgrounds were in attendance. Among them were the President of the Legislative Council, Zhang Yoxing. Also, there was Executive Council convener Lam Wun Kwong, who said he's not a government official. From the government side, only the Director of Audit, David Sun, attended. A speedboat suspected of being used in trafficking illegal immigrants from the mainland capsized early this morning in Macau waters. 7 or 8 people are believed to be missing, but the search has been called off until the morning. The search operation was launched just 300 meters off the coast near Haksa Beach. Passengers fell in the water when the 6 to 7 meter long fiberglass speedboat capsized not far from a resort in Koloan. A number of people were rescued while still at sea. The Macau Customs Service detained 2 women and 4 men, all from the mainland. Among them is the suspected snakehead who allegedly arranged for the illegal immigrants on board to come to Macau. Another man who was intercepted at the beach was found to be carrying forged documents and is believed to be one of the vessel's passengers. A Macau Customs Service official said all of those rescued so far claimed they were travelling to Macau for gambling and tourism. He added that this is a relatively common situation, but that in this case, overloading and rough sea conditions caused the boat to capsize. Macau authorities have recovered the speedboat and towed it back to land. The vessel was believed to be carrying about a dozen people, despite having a capacity of only 5 to 6. An investigation into the incident is ongoing. Washington says Beijing is expanding its presence in the South China Sea.
China is expanding and accelerating the buildup of its outposts in the South China Sea. to include stationing for their ships and potential airfields. More broadly, they continue an aggressive military modernization program directly aimed at what they consider to be our strengths. Although China is looking for stable ties with the United States, it's more willing to accept bilateral and regional tensions in pursuit of its interests, especially on maritime sovereignty issues.
Clapper said the project involving the outpost is in the construction phase, so it's not clear what weaponry or forces may be deployed there. Still, he said such Chinese activities represent a worrying trend. Beijing today defended these activities, calling them restrained and responsible. The masked man in Islamic State videos, who's called Jihadi John, has been identified as a British computer programming graduate. 26-year-old Mohammed Mwazi was born in Kuwait and grew up in a middle-class neighbourhood in London. Alan Buckner reports.
Back because of your arrogant foreign policy.
Dressed entirely in black, Mwazi used the videos to threaten the West, admonish Arab allies, and apparently decapitate hostages, including Americans, Britons, and Syrians. He's believed to have traveled to Syria in 2012. A research director with the charity Cage, who had worked with Mwazi beginning in 2009, had difficulty believing it's the same man.
You might be surprised to know that the Muhammad that I knew was extremely kind, extremely gentle, extremely soft-spoken. It's hard to imagine the trajectory, but it's not a trajectory that's unfamiliar for us.
Friends of Mwazi said they thought he started to become radicalized after a planned safari to Tanzania following his graduation in 2009. When he landed in Dar es Salaam, he was detained by police overnight before being deported. He was later questioned by British intelligence services and prevented from traveling to his native Kuwait, where he planned to marry.
This is the problem that we have here, that we have created here in the UK an environment in which the security agencies can act with impunity, can destroy the lives of young people without any recourse to being able to challenge them in an effective way.
And I think it demonstrates the scale of the challenge for the security services, who mustn't alienate whole communities and yet have to deal with making assessments about large numbers of people, many of whom are not doing anything that would necessarily suggest anything more than having relationships with others.
Journalists went to an address in West London believed to be Mwazi's home, but there was no one there. A neighbor, an Iraqi, said he knew Mwazi.
It's shock for me. He's done the job. What he thinks it's jihad. No, it's not jihad. I'm telling him it's not jihad. You killed the people. It's jihad. No, it's not jihad. Sorry.
Alan Buckner, TVB News.
Landmark rules on how the internet should be governed have been approved by America's top communications regulator. Tony Sabine reports.
Advocates fighting for a net-neutral America were celebrating last night when the Federal Communications Commission voted to impose groundbreaking rules to regulate U.S. internet providers.
The action that we take today is an irrefutable reflection of the principle that no one, whether government or corporate, should control the free and open access to the internet. This decision is for the right of Americans through their elected local officials to make their own decision about their broadband future.
Net neutrality is the principle that websites or videos load at around the same speed, whatever internet service you pay for. The new rules prevent broadband providers from being able to block or speed up connections for a fee and strike deals with content providers to ensure smoother delivery. The vote ushered in a new era of government oversight for an industry that has seen relatively little.
The result of this broad-based populist activism that we've seen, there's nothing else that you look at that can really explain it.
But the 3-2 result showed it was far from unanimous, with the two dissenters arguing the FCC was extending the powers of big government over local authorities, businesses and citizens.
This proceeding makes it abundantly clear that the FCC still doesn't get it. But the American people clearly do. The proposed government regulation of the internet has awakened a sleeping giant, And I'm optimistic.